So I decided to check out this game because I saw some people I watch play it. I had no idea of this game's existence or that it was in development hell for over 13 years, and so in my insatiable hunger and endless search for a horror game that scratches the itch of playing something that resembles Amnesia: The Dark Descent or comes at least close to the original Silent Hill games, I said why not. Plus this was the first game I'd seen that's on the Geat Engine 5 that doesn't run worse than literal abandoned software like Nintendo Switch emulators that Nintendo nuked out of orbit years ago. I did not read any reviews or had any preconceived opinions of this game before playing it. I only watched a stream of it briefly, but it didn't spoil the plot. Only the vague appearance of one monster, which I honestly forgot up until playing it now 1 month later. Though I did look at the Steam scores after I was finished, and for some reason this game is being insanely glazed. I suspect this is because this is yet another game who made a comeback. You know, like No Man's Sky did. It says not much about the content of the game itself, and negative reviews are, as you might have guessed, flooded with clown rewards, because that's the narrative that the normie hive mind has been given, and so everyone has to follow it, just like with Expedition 33 after it won the most awards in any game show ever. The marching orders are to spam dislikes and personal attacks, and so I fully expect this to happen to this video as well. But unlike the locust swarms in question, who move from product to product every week to consume it and only leave crap in their wake, and then move on to do the same thing over and over with each new shiny product they're told to be hyped about. I actually played this game before I saw the hype, and so this review will be honest, no matter how much the usual cattle screams and cries that it's rage bait, because they can't get out of their bubble of toxic positivity. And so to them, anything that contradicts their opinion must have some agenda behind it, and the majority are always the same suspects as well. People with no PFPs and with clippy PFPs. How very sad. Anyway, on to the review.
We started this journey together, chasing the unknown, seeking what we could not see. But now, we're lost.
Taking place on the moon in 1999, you are in the shoes of a nameless software engineer who was sent to Union Plaza, a lunar station, after a moonquake happened, which seemingly caused a station-wide malfunction of all their security systems. So after a week in the mandatory isolation chamber, you wake up with the task of figuring out what's going on with the station. But it quickly becomes clear that something really bad happened, as not a living soul is anywhere anymore. By reading notes and investigating computer logs and emails after the lunar quake happened, you figure out that some guy named John Cooper went to do a perimeter check outside to see if there were any issues or damage caused by it to the surface of the moon or the base. And at some point he sees something, a strange plant-like life form, and records footage of it. So it turns out that what caused the security system going haywire was not the quake itself, but this data John sent to it for analysis. It decided, after it viewed it, that it needed to shut and lock everything the fuck down. So he goes back inside and he starts developing symptoms of dementia and is quickly becoming Joe Biden, as is anyone who came in contact with him. So a quarantine lockdown is set, which, much like its real-world counterpart of a few years ago, did fuck all to stop the spread of the disease he caught by coming close to that fungus, or whatever it was. So you travel around trying to find a way to the ASN score to shut it down as you were tasked, ASN being the security system. But, well, to the surprise of no one, the main character also caught the disease and starts having seizures and episodes of time loss. So after you shut down the core of the ASN, you go into a delirium again and wake up sometime later in another lunar facility, the Ward. This time being far from a tourist resort facility, but more like a research facility owned by a group called the Prism, which 20 years prior to the game's events were conducting research on these weird life forms they found inside a giant fissure on the moon's surface named the Canal. They all got fucked by the disease naturally and started losing their minds, wanting to become one with this organism through the illness, which slowly turns them into plants themselves. Or I guess these things just suck up everything from their bodies and leave nothing behind, which kind of looked like they're turning into plants, but technically probably not. So nothing much really happens in terms of plot after chapter 4, which is when you find yourself in the ward. It's just more people going insane and dying for the same reason. There's a pair of creatures, one called Entity A, who actually looks like Joe Biden, stalks tiny little you, much like Sleepy Joe likes to do with defenseless little children, and Entity B, who is a female blob, whatever that means, with a long neck that died after it choked on an apple. So it's not even an enemy you have to face. The first thing I thought is that this might be an allegory to Adam and Eve, where Entity B, Eve, eats the forbidden fruit and suffers the consequence, much like the people on the moon, after learning the truth of alien life, suffered the consequence of being wiped out by an unknown disease. Near the end of the game, one of the final tasks we have to do is align some prongs into the moon's surface and inject it with what the previous people thought it was some kind of amniotic fluid. So the quakes they were experiencing were actually the contractions of some kind of giant womb, supposedly, inside the moon. And so we finally open up the way to walk up the canal, which I guess could be a metaphor for a birth canal. We walk down a suspiciously shaped crevice full of the fungi that's been killing everyone. Our software engineer curls up into a fetal position. We appear in a weird blue place with a sphere in the center, which I guess could be an allegory for an egg. I don't fucking know. Then we see this play out. It looks like that painting of God and Adam, and then the flower turning back into a closed bud. So my takeaway from this is that the devs were trying in a very, very artsy-fartsy way to say that this whole thing that's been happening to these people is these alien life forms, through their spores, have managed to, throughout the course of the disease, brainwash the victims into thinking that letting themselves succumb to them so they can feed on them is akin to unbirthing themselves and going back to God. This is the most charitable interpretation I can give this. If instead this is a metaphor or even literally what's happening, then this game is very, very depraved and subversive. But after that, in 2025, they send another expedition to try and retrieve whatever they can from that base. But yeah, they're all wiped out, showing that the life cycle of this organism repeats over and over, just like routine. The end. It's clear they were going for a 2001 Space Odyssey experience here. The ending is pretty much the same thing down to the very imagery presented. It's about as abstract and fever dreamish as well. And much like that movie, I liked the first half when it was about the dread of the unknown and the AI going rogue, but not so much the latter parts. This game starts with an intriguing, grounded mystery and ends in a fever dream of symbolism, metaphor, themes, allegory. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. I take world building, character, and event-driven narratives over themes and allegory-driven ones any day of the week, any hour of the day. I think allegory, when it's either accidental or at least not directly intentional, something the Lord of the Rings, for instance, is packed full of, is far more compelling than blatantly attempting to be a deep Stanley Kubrick movie. This game teeters on the edge of being a walking simulator. It has some of their typical vices, but it also has a semblance of combat. You are equipped with a handheld scanner gun, the CAT or CAT. It has a button that establishes a wireless connection to some very, very punctual things related to progression, and it's the way you access the save points, and a button to fix the display when it becomes distorted thanks to magnetic interference when you walk through certain spots. For its primary fire, it has 3 different modules. One shoots a bolt of lightning, which you use to activate electrical panels to open certain doors so you can progress. You can also stun the first enemy type you encounter, the robots, by shooting them in their exposed chest. A module that gives you a flashlight and a UV display so you can see hidden messages, trails of blood, and other things necessary for puzzles. And a third and final module which allows you to see Entity A when it's invisible, blinds him if you flash it in its face, and opens the doors in this section. I think I see what they were going for here with this device. You can turn it on and off, even though switching it off serves no practical purpose, and the whole module switch switching thing, it having you press a button to access the save points, the clearing of the display, much like how in Red Dead 2 you have to clean your guns periodically. It's all to create immersion, and if you know me, you know I like a lot of immersive sims. It's also an attempt, in my opinion, to create an iconic device. So when someone asks, dude, have you seen that game Routine? Routine? Isn't that game with that creepy scanner weapon? But unfortunately, this game kind of drops the ball here, because these features are very inflexible. They're each used for very specific purposes. The zap module only works in the specific preset targets, the same breaker boxes, with 1 or 2 exceptions to that rule. Shooting other things like cameras, like lights, there's no meaningful feedback. Its stunning capabilities only work on the robots, and after those are gone, that part of it also becomes useless. Same thing with the UV display. You use it less and less as you progress. Then the job of stunning the enemy falls on module 3 alone. It's a sort of square peg goes into square hole situation, except that for each peg that you use, it's rendered pretty much obsolete afterwards. They could have kept all 3 modules relevant. For instance, instead of having the 3rd module reveal the invisible monster, why not have the UV display show it instead? It keeps it relevant, and the visual would be even creepier. This device is pretty limited in how creative you can get with it, considering this is the tool, the iconic thing they made for this game. Now for my biggest issue with this game, in any horror game that uses this formula for enemies, you can't get rid of them. They will always be pestering you and making your life hell when you want to just move on. But you can't, because the enemy stands between you and the objective. At least you can tank one hit from the robots, but Entity A insta-kills you. So you have to do a puzzle and the enemy just happens to be there. You just have to wait, dude. It's waiting gameplay. It's no use stunning, it's no use blinding. You can only wait. I don't know what game started this ridiculous trend, if it was Alien Isolation, and then it got popularized by fucking Mr. X, the most annoying piece of shit in the history of horror games. This retarded trope is so scary, right? Yeah, right. Only if you haven't played many horror games. But if you're not a casual who's only played 5 games in your entire life and actually developed some standards, the only horror here is how annoying it can get. This waiting simulator gameplay will have you seen the monsters enough times that it stops being scary anyway, dude. I'll always look back at how Amnesia did it. It blows this crap out of the water, because in Amnesia, if an enemy spots you and chases you, you hide from it and wait, and then it goes away for good. It despawns. It doesn't keep impeding you from progressing. Once you see the enemy a few times, it stops being scary anyway. So all that remains is how incredibly frustrating it is to deal with it. Anyway, your guy has an implicit stamina meter, which I found utterly pointless as a feature, as I was able to run away from enemies successfully before the stamina drain kicked in and the character could even start slowing down. It's great for wasting your time when you're running outside on the moon's surface though. Also, to add insult to injury, after enemies are introduced and begin roaming around, you have to walk slowly. You can't even run, because they hear you from half a mile away and come straight to your general location. So you're forced to either walk or crawl around to be able to move without being bothered by them. Good thing the game isn't that long. It takes about 6 or 7 hours to beat. Anyway, the puzzles, they're pretty decent. Most of them have you figuring out a password to input in a keypad, whether that's by looking for a badge with an ID or using UV light to check what digits were pressed recently. None of the quote-unquote fetch quests were too bothersome. As long as you read the memos and emails, you'll have enough information to know where to look for the items. A few puzzles are more creative. My favorite one has you looking for symbols that are in locations based on these pictures, so you gotta do some detective work to decrypt a code. There's one where you have to combine the right chemicals to create a decontaminant solution. That one kind of sucked. Felt like a chore having to read all these notes to figure out the specific combination that doesn't conflict with itself. The level design is fair, not too complicated. It's a good idea to memorize where all the doors are in the ward, so you don't have to keep wandering aimlessly looking for a door you forgot while the bald retard keeps stalking you. You don't have a map in this game after all. As for exploration, it's nothing to write home about. Exploring the base is, well, exploration. But in terms of looking for items, well, first, there really aren't any goodies to pick up. All you can grab are batteries for your cat gun, which are really plentiful, and there are also often dispensers with batteries that ensure you'll almost always have at least one battery bar of energy. But in typical walking simulator fashion, the only other objects you can interact with are documents, which you can only rotate and put back in place, just like in every other walking sim. You can't even bring them with you in an inventory. The key items, they're put in the main path. Like always, it's impossible to miss. So in short, there's no reason to go out of your way to explore every nook and cranny of the map. You'd just be wasting your time. Furthermore, there's plenty of meaningless junk strewn about everywhere for the dressing, like I said in the Thief video. In this modern game, it's no different. There's a mechanic where you stand on the tip of your toes to reach higher places, and you can also go prone to look for items below things that had potential to be very satisfying exploration-wise. And it is when you get to use it, which is like 2 or 3 times over the course of the whole game. Criminally underused feature. I believe there are no safe rooms. The monsters can get you even next to the save points. It might be scarier like this to some, but for me, it doesn't do anything special. I would like to be able to save the game and view my goals in peace at least though, but the enemies have to be a hindrance even then. Overall, this game you play for the atmosphere and plot, not for the gameplay. It's not the worst walking sim, not by a long shot. Some of them are just ridiculous, barely interactive movies. You just slow walk forward while someone yaps in your ear, a glorified therapy session pretending to be an artsy-fartsy story. Some untalented freak who could never make it as a novelist realized normie gamers are gullible enough to gladly eat their shit and ask for more. So at least here you get to do things, but it is what it is. The atmosphere is good. There's almost no music save for some that play out of speakers in certain locations like the arcade. Or when enemies are chasing you. Other than that, it's just silence and the sounds of the station echoing through the decrepit, abandoned hallways. It's a fine soundscape. Sometimes I wish it had more creepy, atmospheric ambience, but considering the odds that they'd botch it, then this is just fine. Most sounds are pleasing to hear. Your dude's footsteps are heavy and chunky. The sounds of doors opening are satisfying. You can hear the squeaking of your spacesuit against the surfaces as you're crawling inside vents. The demented noise the operating system plays when you boot it up, and when you turn on the UV light is pretty creepy. Some of these little robots sound very familiar. But as for the enemy's positional audio, it's pretty unreliable. It's hard to tell how far or close they are to you. The reverb in the distance is nice to hear, but I feel that the loudness is what's not accurate. There were a few instances where that actually got me killed almost. And then the horror. It's okay. There are a bunch of cheap-ass jump scares. Most of them didn't do anything for me. Early in the game, a lot of doors just love to close in your face loudly. I don't know if they were going for jump scares here, but no. And the monster jump scares are cheap. They're very cheap. Rule number 1 of jump scares: if you have to rely on adding artificial, loud-ass noises to your jump scare, you've already failed. Perfect jump scare is the silent one, but those are hard to do. So at least make the sound coherent. Don't add some artificial shit to make it louder, because loud equals scary, dude. The set piece when you activate the server to introduce the first monster was good. The tension was high. So much so that I purposely kept running back and forth from the elevator to see if the threat was real or not. And unfortunately it wasn't. It would have been nice to have an actual panic moment here. The general atmosphere of the game is more chill than scary or oppressive. Most of the horror comes from the enemies. But like I said, like in terms of the enemies, after you get a good look at their face and it kills you a few times, then it stopped being scary. Seeing the monster silhouette in the distance, though, it's pretty creepy. The horror in the in-game writing, in emails and diaries and audio logs, is a mixed bag. In a couple instances, it does something that I really like, which is ominous text. Take this one for instance. The phrasing used is creepy. way. I've been seeing some odd images in my cat screen when using the interface module. It looks like something walking by. End quote. What this does for me is it takes my mind, which is already primed to be on edge because of the atmosphere, and it uses vague language to entice my imagination while nudging it towards fear by using words such as odd and something walking by. It doesn't over-describe the implied threat, as many horror stories unfortunately do. Not in this particular log, at least. The way they did it made my mind snap to something even creepier than that. Some kind of apparition that only appears in the camera, much like ghost pictures and stuff. So once again, my mind creeped me out more than the reality of the situation. But on the other hand, there's writing that's just questionable. This here reads straight out of a shitty analog horror YouTube art project. It tries to be vague, but it's really not. It watches us. It's here with us. Come on. No threatening words are used, so it doesn't sound scary at all. It sounds like slop some writer wannabe from Reddit decided to shit out one day. Plus, it's completely incoherent when characters write like this. They're in a life-threatening, horrifying situation, and instead of panicking, they calmly write shit like this. Compare that to the previous example, where they are clearly bugged out by the weird anomaly they saw on the display. It's coherent.
Hell's influence is undeniable. They are essentially unraveling an unusual series of effects, both remarkable and concerning. I suspect I will soon follow. Until then, I remain committed to my work, observing and documenting the canal's effects on personnel on board.
God, nobody talks like this. I hate this overused trope of the quirky scientist who is too fucking drunk on the Kool-Aid of discovery and curiosity to the point where their basic survival instincts are overridden. Nobody talks like this. Also, at the end of the game, they do the whole reporting style of writing with redacted passages and stuff, and it was good. But I gotta be honest, this build-up here is good, but the reveal, it's just a bunch of plants, dude. I would have liked something actually scary for the final picture of the missing expedition. Now here are some issues that I had to face. Like I said, this game runs on the Unreal Pajit Engine 5, and I have no idea why it had to. The game has so much post-processing slapped on it that the realism, air quotes, of the real-time GI of Lumen gets completely washed away. They could have done this in UE4. It would run better, look better, have less issues. And although the game does run smoothly, like I said earlier, which is basically a miracle considering the engine in question, probably because the game is set in enclosed hallways without much stuff to draw, well, it still does stutter occasionally, but it's not as bad as in games like Silent Hill 2 Remake and Shit Hill Feminism. It still has some issues though. I lost count of how many times Lumen decided to flashbang me. It's hilarious how people just gloss over this as if it's a non-issue. Every other UE5 game has this. I had a bunch of those in Chronos as well. I also had a glitch that started to manifest late in the game where my mouse would just spaz out. It actually jump scared me when it happened the first time, but at least it's not as bad as in Arc Raiders where the fucking mouse just freezes frequently. I had these problems playing around in UE5 and even in UE4, so it's an engine issue. Another thing that's scarier than the monsters themselves is how this game jump scares you with its janky physics props when you push them by accident. And they don't even have collision, by the way, which, come on now, it's not that difficult to do in Unreal, man. You just tick a few check boxes and it works. What the fuck, dude? And another thing, the monster is invisible, right? That's intentional. But look at this crap. You call this an animation? I could swear the game was glitching out and the enemy model was just glitching out of existence because this looks absolutely goofy. Not to mention when it decides to get stuck tap dancing in a corner somewhere. What the fuck is this? Okay, I guess I'll do the puzzle like this. There's also an issue where I could pick up batteries for the cat even though it was full and I had not used any of its battery draining functions. It seems to be a glitch with the Ultra View model when you use the UV mode, but it made me get rid of batteries in the map needlessly. Also, lots of typos in the texts. They've been patching those out at least, so good. So, TLDR, It's a relatively spooky walking simulator. The plot starts good and gets boring. The atmosphere is good, but I've seen much better. The gameplay is passable for what it is. The game, thankfully, is pretty short. Replayability is non-existent for me. It doesn't have any memorable moments I'd look forward to seeing other people blind playing it react to. Like, say, walking into that alley in Silent Hill 1 or emerging out of the clock tower into hell. There's a lot that I like, but I don't really love anything about it. Horror games need to drop the fucking unkillable roaming enemy meme, though. You want to do the whole no way to defend yourself thing because you think it's scarier? Oh, fine. Then base yourself on something like Amnesia, not Visage or Alien Isolation. So my final score is a 6.5 out of 10. It's okay. It's not a masterpiece. It's not a breath of fresh air. It's a very above average walking simulator, when the average of those compared to other genres is like a 3 out of 10. I would ask the usual hordes of zombies too dumb to put a fucking profile pic up to take a step back, try to at least conjure up 1 or 2 words in whatever smooth substance they have inside their heads and see the product for what it is instead of what the fucking review scores tell you to feel about it. It doesn't matter that it was in development hell and made a hecking wholesome comeback, dude. None of the narratives surrounding the game matter. It's just a walking sim that does nothing original, and I'll leave it at that. Peace out.